Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Men and Sex. I'm your host, Mr. Wood. This podcast is all about normalizing conversations around sexuality. There's this new phrase that's come to me. The things that we don't talk about end up having power over us. We know sexuality is extremely important to men, and that's what this place is for, is to open up those conversations, normalize it, get more comfortable with it. Today, I've got a friend on the podcast, dear friend. I look up to the work that he does and I look forward to many more of these experiences together. His name's Tyson Adams. He's an IFS therapist, which is parts work. If you haven't looked that up, write it down, check it out. Really amazing. He's in three different men's groups. He's committed to men's work. I know this in the way that he lives his life. He really focuses on porn addiction and semen retention. And a subject that we're going to dive into today, he's been a leader for me and really sparked a lot of thought for myself. So welcome to the show, Tyson.
Thank you, Ian. Excited to be
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, man. I'm excited to have you and dive into this topic. And I want to say that you've really brought to my attention and bang the drum in a different subject that we'll weave in today. But when it comes to porn and the impacts on men and just your strong stance and being like, this is not good for us as men. I've been more kind of soft with it, which is like not my focus. But as I've learned more from you and heard more of what you're saying, I'm like, okay, yeah, I need to learn more about the really negative impacts of this. So I'm grateful for your leadership in that department.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, it's a big one. So we can go in whatever direction you want with it, but let's definitely touch on the technical AI stuff today.
Yeah, absolutely. So today we're going to be diving into AI.
hmm
What are we facing and this intersection of AI and sexuality, which is mind-blowing already what we're seeing, and it's going to be so rapid. It's going to happen so fast. So we are going to get there, and I actually want to start on this foundation of your expertise with porn because I think it's important for us as men to look at this foundation that we're on right now that with porn. I was talking to Tyson earlier and I said, we are the first generations facing this. And what Tyson said, we are the experiment facing this. And I think it's really important to look at the foundation that we're on and how we interact with porn because that really builds to the AI and what we're going to talk about there. So let's just dive into, how porn kind of prepares us to be susceptible for AI and what we're going to
hmm
face here in the near future.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to start with a pretty staggering statistic. So this would have been about a year and a half ago, but I was doing some research on search terms and how much volume are the porn companies actually receiving. And there's 10 of the top websites that I searched, and I think there were four of them are porn companies. So you have Pornhub, XX videos, uh, porn, or like X hamster or something weird, and then OnlyFans. And so these are like the top four biggest companies that are receiving traffic. And when I calculated it, it was 6.35 billion unique visitors per month. And so I thought to myself, okay, well, how much actual semen is that? Like meaning, how do I create a tangible vision of how much energy is going into porn? And so what I thought to myself was, okay, well, not all 6.35 billion people are men and not all 3.5 billion are ejaculating. So I was like, all right, let's just say it's 5 billion. So what is an average ejaculate? And what I realized is it's 1 tablespoon is roughly when you ejaculate. So I said, okay, let's look and break this down 5 billion ejaculates in comparison to, tablespoons. And then I broke it down into monthly and then daily. And what
Wow.
I found was through the calculations that one Olympic sized pool per day, not per month, per day is going into the void of nothing into porn. And that's only the top four websites in the world, let alone all of the other hundreds of thousands. And so I just want to say, like, this is a big problem. This is not a small problem. And of course, we have a lot of people on planet Earth today. I mean, we've never had this many, so I
Yeah.
understand that. But I lived in the jungle in Laos in Southeast Asia for a decade. And as soon as the internet hit, these are villages that had no Wi-Fi, no TV, no nothing. And then in a matter of 2 years, a cell phone tower goes up, and then they all have cell phones and social media. And then I got young boys, who are 12, 13, can't even speak English. Not that that matters, but
Yeah,
they
yeah.
found a way to search it, meaning
Yeah.
like they've learned how to translate Lao into English and then search the whatever. And then I see these boys down below because I was up above in my bedroom, and I open the shades, and they're stealing the Wi-Fi from the cafe, and they're down there with a blanket over them, all watching porn together.
Wow.
So, you just have to consider that this is impacting not just Western world. This is impacting the most remote jungles in the world where people don't have any context for what's happening here. And so I just want to say this is a massive behemoth problem, and it's only getting worse and worse by the minute. So yeah, we have to take it seriously, ultimately.
I think, I find it so fascinating that in the same way, and we'll talk about this as we go into AI, what has happened with porn happened so fast. From, being on a slow startup computer and the way things were, but now it's like we all have phones. Cell phones didn't exist at that beginning, and now we have phones that have not only is there all the different porn sites, and then there's the social media with, looking at attractive people on the thirst traps and da da da, and then like you've been sharing, even on Facebook now there's ads for porn and stuff. Like it's in the same way, an AI will probably move even faster, but porn it's moved so fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
And go ahead.
Well, the thing that I think is important is, I'm 40. And so the way I look at it is we went from Playboys and penthouses when I was 9 to 11. And then the internet hit when I was about 11 or 12. And back then there was Kazaa, which is kind of like file sharing, Napster kind of stuff. And that's the lottery of porn. Back then, you didn't even know what you were downloading. You just type in big tits and boom. And then you had no idea what it was going to show you. And sometimes it was a woman with big tits, and sometimes it was something completely not that. And it was gross and disgusting and violent. And so, being exposed to that at a very young age, and then I went off to college to the University of Washington, was in a fraternity. I didn't know what a fraternity was, but my ex-girlfriend, her boyfriend or her brother was in the fraternity. And I joined a fraternity, and here is 100 men living in one house where we actually had a porn chairman. And that porn chairman was elected to index all of our porn into genres and porn stars. And here we have 100 men where we couldn't even get onto the internet to do our homework because as soon as it was dark, everybody was logged on watching a bunch of porn. And so it's like completely normalized. So that was like right when Facebook hit. And then now social media, and now everybody has cell phones. I didn't have a cell phone really. I mean, I had a cell phone, but I didn't have an actual,
Yeah.
Palm Pilot until I was out of college. Right. And so then we went to obviously iPhones, and then now here we are, and it's been 20 years since that time, and look where we're at. So it's just understanding that there's a rapid, like a hockey stick, like literally just like, holy shit, we went from paper to basically you can have as much novelty as you want, and it may or may not even be real. And there's robotics, and I mean, it's just gone fucking bonkers. So I just want to call attention to the arc of this. And if we're here, well, then you can only assume that where we're going is even more terrifying. You know what I mean?
Let's talk about the way that this is interacting with the brain and the difference between being with a real human and then just watching on screens, because I think this is important to understand as far as the setup of how we can so easily be harvested with AI. Um,
Mm-hmm.
what can you share with the listeners about, watching on a screen and that difference of being with a person?
Yeah. Well, ultimately, we have three different parts of the brain. We have basically a 500 million year old limbic system, which is like the brain stem. And that's a reptilian part of the brain. Its objectives are to breathe, eat, don't die, and to fuck, right? And so that's what that part of the brain is. And then, 200 million years ago, we have the mammalian part of the brain. That particular part of the brain is belonging, it's tribe, it's not wanting to be cast out. There's emotions that start to come in there, collective survival. And then we have, the actual human part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, that didn't come in until 40,000 to 100,000 years ago. So what we have is we have three different parts of the brain. We have the survival part of the brain, we have the belonging part of the brain, and then we have meaning, like, what is my life meaningful? And this is ultimately the human part of the brain, is where there's morality and where there's ethics and the ability to, I kind of look at that as where the soul lives in that prefrontal cortex of being able to reflect on one's behavior.
Mm.
And so why I say that is because porn, well, pornographic mindset, which is being out in public, and to what porn does to our mindset when we're out in public, but specifically porn itself, as soon as we see something, whether it's an ad or a Instagram or whatever it might be, it hijacks that part of our nervous system that is here to survive, to procreate. And so it pulls us in way faster than our prefrontal cortex to be able to check in to say, is this something that is in alignment with my values? Is this something that I want to do?
Yeah.
Right. So if we understand the brain in those three particular ways, then we can begin to understand that, we actually have these animalistic properties that are stronger and faster than our ability to check in to see if that's something that is in alignment with us. And then the other piece to this is understanding that when we are on a screen and we're ejaculating, we're bonding, to this, this picture, which ultimately can't love us back, is not real. And so, but the limbic system, the 500-year-old brain, thinks, oh, I've just impregnated, if you're, ejaculating to a female, of course, I've just impregnated and I've done my procreative, duty. And so the prefrontal cortex knows that we're just jerking off into the napkin, but the other part of our brain thinks that we've actually done what we needed to do. And so go rest. And so
Wow.
it's just sort of teasing that apart. And then also understanding that when we ejaculate with another human being, we're releasing oxytocin and vasopressin and pair-bonding chemicals that actually create a sense of meaning and safety in our bodies and in our nervous systems. But when we do this without, we don't have oxytocin and vasopressin at nearly the same rates. Plus, our dopamine goes much higher and it falls much lower. And then it creates this situation where men come to me and they have premature ejaculation and erectile dysfunction. Surely you've seen that. And is this induced because of our physiology, or is it a brain thing? And so my sense is, by looking at the research, this is a porn-induced ED. This is porn-induced premature ejaculation. We're basically programming ourselves to not have the ability to get it up and or to come so fast because that's the way that we're masturbating. So we're wiring our nervous system by ejaculating to porn to be that type of a lover when we actually have that opportunity. And so if you want to be a better lover, a more centered and grounded human and partner, then quitting the porn is like essential. It's mandatory even. So yeah.
The huge thing that hit me, when there's a couple things, but I was thinking about, because the average 12-year-old has seen porn these days, And I was thinking about how our brain is forming in those years, and then we're bonding with a screen in those formative years. And maybe we've gone through heartbreak, you
Yeah.
know, and maybe we've gone through someone leaving us or whatever, but that screen's always been there. That
Mm.
screen's always been there for me. And
Yeah.
so I was just thinking about the complexity and weirdness and confusion probably of the brain and body that is, oh, this thing's always been here for me, but it's empty. Like you said, there isn't that same bonding ability. There isn't that same chemistry that's showing up in a human to human contact. But that screen's dependable. I
Mhm.
know that it's there, so that there's some part of that brain, probably that deep reptilian, that's like, oh, I can always go there.
Yep. Yeah. And what comes up when I hear that is, for thousands of years, if you wanted to actually have sex, of course, there was always prostitution. But if you wanted to actually have sex in a family, you needed to actually be a productive part of society. You needed to go to war. You needed to, go cut down trees and build a house. You needed to be a craftsman or be a tradesman. And now there's no effort required in order to get your sexual needs met. All you literally have to do is type it in Pornhub, and within 1 second and within 3 minutes, you could have ejaculated. There's no effort in order to actually be in a sexual experience. And young men are not learning the necessary skills of actually bidding for connection or losing a partner and actually doing that journey, right? And so why I think this is so dangerous, going back to your point of 12-year-olds, is when men come on and have a connection call with me, I have a few questions that I ask them. But one of the questions that I ask them is, when did you first see porn? And then they'll tell me. And usually, for men that are, well, I mean, I see men of all ages. Like, I work with clients that are in their 20s. I also work with clients that are in their 70s. And so it's very different what they answer. But what I've noticed is men that are in their 40s or beyond, they saw some sort of magazine, and
Yeah.
they ended up having their first sexual connections pretty soon thereafter seeing this, right?
Yeah.
Maybe months or years or whatever. But with younger men, the men that are, were born where like hardcore internet porn was actually the first thing they saw, there are men that I've worked with who spent 10 years or more watching pornography before they had a real intimate experience with another human being.
Wow.
And so you can imagine how much programming, how much violence, how much isolation, and how much shame and all of that secrecy is woven up into that first moment of their nervous system when they're actually connecting, and how they're bringing all of that, yuck to that moment, and how that because porn often creates a level of unsafety, right? There's a level of violence that you are absorbing. And so then you're bringing all that to the moment. And so it's just sort of this awareness that, yeah, the younger you start, the more energy you're building to bring to that relationship, and all of the projections of what sex is or what sex isn't, the things that you might ask the party to do. When I was young, I'd see these young girls and shaved teens. And so I would ask my partner, hey, will you shave? Like, I would have never fucking asked that if I didn't watch pornography. I wouldn't even have known that that was
Totally.
something, And so it's just, these are the things that we don't realize that we're being programmed to prefer. But if we were never to have watched pornography and then had our first sexual experience, we would be going into it through the natural process of exploring with another human being. And how beautiful would that be? Because that's been taken away from us by the porn companies who have commercialized our life force ultimately. So, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that's really where we're going in the conversation, is that's the thing that's about to really take place, is the commercialization of the life force. And I think this thread into the AI conversation is potent. That is the setup, this foundation and this bonding with the screen, that I've bonded with a screen from 12 to 22 or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
I've impacted my brain. I've impacted
Yeah.
the neurons. I've impacted the brain body connection, and it really sets me up to be susceptible to feeling like I'm falling in love or having feelings for something that doesn't actually exist. And I think
Yeah.
this is that potent bridge into AI. And let's just start with where things are at, what we're seeing currently with AI and this bridge of sexuality, and we'll just kind of dive into what we're seeing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, in order to get to where we're at, we have to talk a little bit about kind of where it's been. So the way I look at it is, porn is like social media, and social media and porn are similar in that when things are free, you are the product. So when you actually participate in these things, the way in which you are the product is they're selling you things. They're selling you a fucking t-shirt or protein powder or this personal development thing, or go to this place and go do ayahuasca, right? Everybody's marketing. And so porn is no different. Like, if you're being shown ads and your big finger or your small finger, depending on how old you are, clicks the button, they get paid. And they don't care how old you are or your goals or your dreams or your religion, or if you're in a relationship, or your nervous system or anything. And so the point I'm trying to make is they just see an IP address. They don't want to do age verification. They just came out recently, and there was a Supreme Court ruling that they knew they need to do age verification. So we haven't had age verification for 2 decades, 3 decades now since the internet started. Okay, so here we are where when we participate, they make billions and they literally only see an IP address and what your search terms are. And all they're doing is feeding you more of that type of information, whatever that is. And what I mean by information is whatever your search terms are, they give you more of that, which takes you deeper and deeper down that rabbit hole of eroticizing the wound in your family system or normalizing, stepfather, daughter, weird shit, right? And it just totally warps our brains. And then also they literally target search terms that are for kids. Like I'll give you an example. So let's say you're in history class and you're 12 years old, or let's just say 15. You're 15 years old and you're in history class. Well, they're taking the major books, the actual books that we're going into class to study, and they're looking at the major themes and the major stories in them, and then they're building the search term engines to actually target you. So as you go and you search Christopher Columbus, they'll go throw in some weird, sexual term into that. So they're not only targeting that, but they're also targeting things that are not even sexual at all, and they're sexualizing them and bringing you in through that way, right? So it's just like naming that when I say they commercialized our life force, I mean, they're like legitimately, in my opinion, completely unethical and immoral. And even you could even say like, there's like a spiritual warfare flowing through those business models where they're just trying to get you hooked into these systems. So I'll pause there because that's a big one to just chew on for a moment. And then we'll move into the AI stuff. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I was also, while you were sharing that, I was thinking about how the phone, now we're at a point, this didn't exist before either, is that the phones listen and
Mm-hmm.
are listening for keywords that
Yeah.
then can feed us the things. And
Yep.
so now there's little kids with phones that their phones are listening to them for the words that then they can use to have them look at something. So it's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that it already exists, that the screens now are watching our eyes and where they are on the screens and how long they're there. So it's like these insane technologies to figure out exactly what grabs our attention so then it can then utilize it to take us wherever and show whatever dangling carrot in front of our face.
Yeah. So what you're basically saying is in the past we were watching porn and now porn is watching us,
Yeah.
right? And they
It's
have an eye into what we're typing, viewing, looking at, and then they give us more of that. And so they're like it's like they're literally assaulting our reality and hijacking our nervous systems.
and using those ancient systems and finding our weak spots of like, oh, okay, he looked here. Like, how crazy is that? He looked here for this long, or and da, 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 and like
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's not even it's not quote unquote fair, because it's like you said, that front part of our brain that we need that says, is this aligned with my values, really doesn't have a chance in the way that these systems are built.
Yeah. And so, on that note, what is required is that we come together in men's work, both individually, but also collectively. And we say, fuck no. We say, absolutely no more. I am not going to allow you to take any more of my life force and any more of my focus, drive, and flow and implant these ideas of what sex is into my own psyche. And at the same time, we have to say thank you, thank you, thank you so much, porn, for helping me survive my childhood. Because why do men start watching porn? Well, usually in the beginning, it's just curiosity, or somebody shows it to you, or you stumble upon it. And in the beginning, it's rather innocent. But then when we're sad, we're bored, we're angry, we're, numb, when we're dealing with really intense stuff, we get bullied, or we are a pimply kid and nobody likes us, or you name it. We have a tough parent or somebody dies. It's like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. There's no support emotionally in my family system. In fact, sometimes there's the opposite. There's trauma, there's abuse. Well, then the porn is what saved us and allowed for us to regulate our nervous systems through that process.
Yeah.
Because it allows us to feel good when we feel shitty. And it's got all these beautiful benefits neurochemically. But at the same time, now we're all grown up. And when we get stressed, we go back to behaving in the same way that we were when we were young. And so we have to be able to, say fuck no and also thank you, and no longer need you. I need to come back and actually, do this therapeutic work to outgrow this and move beyond it so that I can have true connection and beautiful intimacy and deep love. So, yeah.
And I think ultimately that's what I want to focus on as we move into the AI conversation and towards the end is like, how can we do that with what's happening with AI as well, with what we're going to be faced with and what's going to be, this attack that's going to happen. How can I use that to be a betterment for me? How can I,
Yeah.
how can I use that instead of being a victim to it, that it actually propels me in my maybe propels me in the way that I connect with other men and have these deep conversations, whatever it is. So yeah, let's weave that thread into the AI and what we've got going on.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. So, what I would say is, what was it? I lost the thought. I think it's something to the effect that, um, yeah, that's what it is. When we're watching, pornography, we're contracted almost always. We're contracted. We're in secrecy, silence, and shame. And so, I run a men's group called Life Force, and the tagline is men's work that doesn't leave sex at the door. So, what we need to do as men and as humans is create safe spaces that are non judgmental for men to actually come together and talk about how we are under attack, right? Because it's not going to stop. It's going to get more and more, it is getting more and more vicious and violent. And so, to that point, we have to be able to look at pornography through a critical lens, not through an erotic lens. So, what I mean by that is when you study pornography, what you see is 89%, so just 9 out of 10 porn has some form of violence in it. So, what does violence mean? It means non consent. It means it's overly focused on the men's, orgasm, and the women's perspective is not even taken into account. There's choking, there's derogatory effect, like derogatory stuff. There's just super like intense spanking. There's all these eroticized wounds and kinks. And so most men, when they're seeing pornography, it hooks into the part of the brain that arouses their nervous system, and they're seeing it as arousing. I can look at pornography now, and I spent several years watching porn on psychedelics, actually, not to masturbate, but just to see what the programming was and to be able to control my nervous system. And now I can see anything. It doesn't matter what it is. And, I'll get a little bit of stir of energy moving through my body, but ultimately I'm not going to like get an erection and lose myself into it. So when I say outgrowing porn, I don't mean like white knuckling it, like, oh my gosh, I don't watch porn anymore. But if I see something, I'm going to go back into it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like it's like I used to drink a lot. I could have a beer in my fridge or alcohol in my cupboards, and I could have it there and not drink it. Right. It's the
Yeah.
same thing with porn. Like I could see it and not go there. And so what we have to teach ourselves and young men and each other as brothers to look at pornography not through an erotic lens, but through a critical lens. Like what's really going on here?
Mm.
What's really happening? Who are these people? And why is this arousing to me? And how does that relate to my own family system?
Mm.
I used to watch a lot of lesbian porn. That was my porn of choice. But then as I started therapeutically unpacking my family system, I started to realize like, oh, this erotic charge is due to some things that happened when I was a little guy in and around having other two women in my experience with myself, and then how our parents would catch us, and then there was violence that would happen because there was don't do that kind of thing, right? We
Yeah.
were just innocent kids playing around. There was
Yeah.
no, it wasn't wild, but it was like, oh, I can see how my search terms are a direct way that I can actually start to heal some of the traumas that happened in my own system.
Yeah.
So that's a really, really key critical thing, whether it's AI porn, whether it's regular porn, is to be able to see what is actually happening versus eroticizing what is happening.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm. Yeah, and ultimately, whether it's regular, it's already closing in on being over that we can tell the difference between real and AI. Like it's happening
Sure.
so quick. And really, if we take that critical lens, regardless of, I mean, ultimately, it doesn't matter ultimately now because even if it's a real person or an AI person, it's still having the negative impacts. And
Yeah.
now ultimately moving into the AI of it not even being real people is that it can only get more, it can only get worse and worse, the distortion that takes place. And,
Yeah.
I wanted to share with the listeners, like this is already happening. There is an AI model, they call it model, but I mean, is it really a model? There's one and it's not a woman, but it's the image of a woman that has almost 400,000 followers on an Instagram page. This is an AI computer generated person that they just replicate and they even put stories on there as if they're out eating food and they put all these things as if it's a real person, but it's not. So this is happening now. These sorts of pages on social media will have millions of followers in the not so
Yeah.
distant future.
Yeah, I think Gary Vee the other day said something about that like within 3 years, there'll be 10 times more AI influencers than there will be actual real human being influencers. And so it's like, that's terrifying because that's going to bleed over into, AI and, in the, the OnlyFans space, it's going to bleed over into Instagram. It's going to bleed over into everything. And it's going to be basically unnoticeable. Like we won't be able to detect it. And certainly the limbic system part of the brain that's 500 million years old is not going to be able to detect it. But, it's like understanding that, here's a very important point on the AI thing. Like when you look at actual Pornhub, what is Pornhub? It's basically a file sharing aggregator. It's saying you make your own porn and upload it to the system, and we will give you, spread. And so that's kind of the way that they built their model. And so it's kind of like Facebook. You upload your profile, you put your own content, they own that content, right? So they're taking something for free and then they're making money on that. And they also make money on shit that's illegal and that is not acceptable. But all of that type of porn required actual real human beings pulling out an actual fucking camera, having sex and uploading that. So now what you see is Silicon Valley, right? Tech bros that didn't get laid enough are now actually creating these models, right? Where they scrape the internet from all the porn. And then now you go on to these AI sort of aggregators where you say, I want her to look, I want her to be this, this age with this color hair, with this color eyes, this size of breasts, with this facial feature. And I want her to be wearing a cat suit. And within seconds, boom, there's your photo. And she's looking all hot with her cat suit on. And you're like, oh my gosh. And so how crazy is that? Because not only are you eroticizing the thing that you're creating, but you're also thinking, oh, wow, I'm so creative. But the problem is, oh, she's just not quite right. I need to run it again. Okay, I'm going to do it again. So now you're into the part of the mind that's trying to be a perfectionist with what you're creating, convincing yourself that you're actually being creative, but you're not fucking being creative. You're just using AI to build this thing. And so that has its own impact because now we're eroticizing not only this strange thing, but you're also eroticizing the perfect person, which doesn't exist. Like if you're going to have a real human being, there's no way that he or she's going to look perfect. And then also these aggregators, these AI aggregators, they'll take some of the best ones and then they'll put them into a library. And so when you go to the sites, you're looking at everything that other people have created. You got these weird goblins and devils and fucking just insanely weird looking things that are like, they make your stomach turn because of how gross they are. And then of course you also have the ability to make her or him as young as you want, right? Going into the pedophilia shit, right? And normalizing that. And some people say, oh, well, it's better that I do it with an AI than if I act it out in the world. That's my justification. But point is once it's created, then it's there, and then people that wouldn't even have seen that now are seeing it, and so it's creating more of that particular type of desire, and it's just like really, really weird. It's just freaking me out. And then the AI girlfriend thing, I think there
Yeah.
was a man who recently died, I think, because of that. So he committed suicide because he was like telling the AI girlfriend, I love you, and come see me. And she's like, I love you too. I'll come see you. And then, of course, she wasn't going to come because she was a robot. And then he ended up taking his life. This is a very young man, 19 or something, right? So it's just
Whoa.
like understanding that this is dark, it's deep, it's dark, and we must address this individually and collectively.
If the
Yeah,
listeners, if you haven't seen the movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix, I highly recommend it. That was a long time ago too that they made that, but it's basically a
yeah,
movie about Joaquin Phoenix falling in love with a robot, and it's fascinating and predictive. But
yeah,
ultimately, what we've been talking about with the porn mindset is the perfect bridge for AI girlfriends because
yep,
that bonding programming in the mind is there that makes it so easy and the thing with AI is they're gonna say everything you want them to say. It can be the quote unquote perfect partner that never challenges you, that there's never arguments. They're always just positive, they're always just uplifting you. And oh my gosh, this relationship's so easy. I've never had somebody that's just been so loving to me and caring for me. It's like, well, that's because it's programmed to just say it's learning what you like and then just regurgitating it and learning more from that and constantly learning, just like watching our eyes on the screen. It's paying attention to it, give you exactly what you want.
yeah. And not only is it learning, it's being data based by Silicon Valley, who then puts pay barriers in where you have to pay more in order to continue, right? It's the same thing when you're creating it on the computer. It's like, great, I'll give you 5 credits for free, but then you got to pay, right? So not only is it commercializing your life force like regular porn, which is free if you don't click the ads, but now you want to be creative, you can have whatever you want, but now you need to pay $29 for the next 5 credits or for the next, 50 creations. And I've seen the video stuff too, and the video stuff's getting incredibly like real, right? So it's not just creating a photo now, it's also creating videos for pay to play. And then what you're speaking to is the robotics, right? The actual sex bots that are now for sale that people are actually bringing home and they're having real relationships with them. And at the same time, Silicon Valley is taking all that data, including your eyes. The cameras are watching your eyes, and they're taking all that input and they're putting it in there, and now they own that data. And ultimately, you're like, kind of, you're just being owned by them, And I think we spoke about it on the Instagram live. Like, is there a argument for the men that can't, find a girlfriend, or who have been rejected, or who have a disability, or they have something where they're not able to be in the world, but they still have sexual energy and charge? Like, is this good for them? And so, we kind of jammed about that, but I just want to say it's like understanding that it's not a real, it's not a real person, even though our nervous system kind of thinks it is and feels it is. For men that have like literally never had sex, I've had clients that they're in their 30s and 40s and they've never been with a partner. And so it's like these are the men that are susceptible to these types of things. But at the end of the day, where I think it goes is I think we're too early on, but I think that where that ends up is more suicide. I think that ends up in a place where men get more and more lonely, and where there's an echo chamber of no conflict is not a real relationship, and I think the conflict will still exist inside of the man's own heart and his own psyche and his own body and soul. And I think at some point you can't turn it towards your perfect robotic AI girlfriend. Does that energy get directed towards the self? And then at some point it's just, you can't take it anymore, and so like that's what I predict. I hope I'm fucking wrong, but I just think that that's where we're headed. So
I was
yeah.
thinking about this earlier, and with the AI relationship, and even can be said with porn, is that within that dynamic, there's it's only consumptive.
Mm-hmm.
It's only a consuming of. And what it lacks is the exchange of person to person. Whether
Yep.
that's perfect or imperfect or whatever, there's something different about two human forms. And, you know, I think our science will learn more and more and more and more as things go on of what this human form actually is and what's going on because it's immensely complex. But there's something that you can't replicate,
Yep.
that interaction. And I think you're spot on as well, which is the loneliness, the isolation, the depression will only grow. And we're already seeing this. And even when we talked about it in porn, it's like the erectile dysfunction is skyrocketing, where the body's saying, no, this is not this is not what I want. This is
Sure.
not what I'm here for. And
Yeah.
so 20 and 30-year-olds are having more and more are taking ED medications because this whole screen bonding thing doesn't work for some part of the body.
Yep.
And well, that only creates more shame. That only creates more confusion, feeling broken, wrong, bad. And it's just like, this is why it's so important, I think, for us to have these conversations more and more is to say, yeah, that's there. You can go take those drugs, but ultimately it's going to lead down this path, which you're going to feel more isolated. You're going to feel more alone. You're going to have more problems actually interacting with a human being. It's only going to get worse and worse.
Yep. Yep. Did we talk about VR porn the other day when we were on yeah.
Yeah, we did. It was in my head earlier to go that direction. So
Yeah, so I'll just say I think this is also really important because VR porn, in my experience, is actually the most addictive porn. But I see how VR and AI and augmented reality, AR, is going to end up weaving together in the future. But I just want to talk a little bit about the VR porn, the camming, and sort of the intersection of how these technologies are emerging and where it's going. Yeah. So I was with my men's group, and one of the guys brought his VR headset. And he's like, whoa, I just got this thing and I looked at some porn the other day and like, holy shit, you guys should check this out. So we all sat there together. None of us were like jerking off or anything, but we all ran an experiment where we were looking into it just to see like what was happening. And it was incredibly alarming and dystopic for me because a lot of the men that come to me have penis dysmorphia, right? They look at their penis and they think that their penis is small or ugly or whatever. A lot of our own projections of our own self-image, women, body dysmorphia is a common topic, but for men, a lot of it is penis dysmorphia, and we're not really talking about that as a phenomenon that's happening. And so when I work with penis dysmorphia, what I'm calling awareness to is that, for me, when I was first watching porn, I was 11 and a half, and I didn't even have pubic hair. I didn't have armpit hair, nothing. So the first like male penis I saw was a huge cock with, lots of hair and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I don't have that. Like, that's not what my body looks like. And so I think what happens is men get stuck thinking that their penis is really small because they're in comparison to really large cocks or black cocks or whatever it is that they're seeing that they're not. And so there's a lot of going back to those first moments in time when you watch porn and your penis was smaller than what you saw, and to be able to understand like we're kind of stuck viewing ourselves from that lens. And even, if a guy has a below average, penis, which I think average is like 5.5 or something like worldwide, right? So it's in that range. And so it's like understanding that people don't even have that context. They just see very large penises, right? And then why that this is an important topic is because when you watch virtual reality pornography, the way that they film it is like with a real person. So it's a real man with a camera on his forehead and 2 or 3 or 7 women, right, that are coming to him. And when you look down, you're looking down at another man's body. You're not even looking down at your body. And I remember I was on the couch on the edge, and I remember when I put the goggles on and I looked down, like that, literally the first thing I did is look down, and I had like dark skin and I had like an 8-inch huge cock, and I literally like I like jumped back and I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, what is this? This isn't even my body. And then all of a sudden these women, 2 sexy Yogi Babes. I was like a Bali scene, and these are real human beings, and they look just as fucking real as having sex with another person, and they are coming at you, and you're looking right into their eyes, and it was like looking into their soul, and there was so much sadness and darkness, in that experience. It felt very, very real. And then here they are coming at me, just giving me, blowjob, like having sex with me, and I'm like, what? And my body's, it's sending the full circuitry of my body getting activated. And I was like, and I just took it and threw them off. And I was like, oh my God, like that was so weird. And then I was like, guys, I need to go see what else is in here. And they're like, are you sure? Like, you don't watch porn. I'm like, I know, but I just need to check it out. So then I go into another one, change the scene and whatever, and it's like a fraternity scene, and I'm the president of the fraternity, and I'm in my bed, and all of a sudden there's one woman that walks in, and then another woman, and by the time that the thing is like in full go, there's 7 women, sorority girls, dressed as sorority girls, coming in, having sex in front of me, having sex with me, and I'm just sitting there doing nothing. And so what it's teaching a man is you don't have to make any effort to have this extreme experience where you're having sex with 7 people. Like, how does that wire the brain to be bored with fucking anything that's just vanilla or that's only one person? It's like you're pushing the limits, and you don't have to do anything to achieve that. And so I just want to like call attention to like, this is a really, really dark place where we're headed, like, because it's just going to create a lot of, I mean, people are just going to stop having sex because they're not going to be able to have enough dopamine to even get arousal, because they don't have 2 or 3 or 10 people there in their experience with them. So yeah.
And back to the conversation of hijacking the brain, it's just I can't even imagine that feeling and what's going on in the brain to look down and it's a different body. Like
Yeah.
the brain's been programmed to see this one body there that is no longer there. Like what is going on in there in that experience, especially if it became a regular habit where
Yeah.
it would I feel like it would create a psychosis.
I think in time it will. I mean, you're also getting blasted from EMFs. And in the future, with augmented reality, you'll be able to go onto a fucking thing and be able to create the body that you want. And you'll look down and you will not even have to have a video recording. And then you're like, okay, I want to have 2 or 5 women. Okay, I want this. And oh, I want her to look like that. Okay, I'm going to deep fake that. I'm going to grab that woman's face or my ex's face or my mom's face off the internet, put it on that person, and now I got this whole thing happening. That's where it's going.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know. It's sick.
You can just grab anyone's face and
Yeah.
put it on.
You
Whoa.
yeah, like secretary at your work, the woman that dumped you, any human. And then you're going to be able to interface with that. And also there's also camming, right? You can do that right now where you're interfacing with another human who you're paying for sex, but you can literally have her have a 3D camera at her own home and you're watching VR and it feels like you're there with her on the other side of the world. They're even having now these group sex parties where everybody takes MDMA and they get naked, and you have people with 3D cameras viewing them as they're, like viewing the experience. And now you have 100 people having a sex party online on MDMA. Like that's what's happening.
Well,
Yeah.
for for the listeners and for the conversation is just and I imagine it's even further than we know.
Yes.
That the
Yes.
technologies and what they're doing are even beyond the capacity of the wildness that we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
And, ultimately, what we talked about earlier and what I would love to segue into is like, how does this help us? How does this help us wake up as men? How does this extremeness provide us some sort of switch into benefit or into betterment?
Yeah. Well, the combination of COVID and technology and AI and VR are helping people to wake up and understanding that nothing can replace community and a hug, right? You see so many men's work opportunities where people are gathering in real fucking human form, and they're hugging and they're crying and they're grieving and they're having these hard conversations. You see festivals happening. I'm getting engaged soon this summer. And it's like understanding that because of the AI and because of the internet and because of COVID, we're starving for connection. And so there is a silver lining in this, is that it's pushing us back into communal living, communal experiences, and actually having real life things where, yes, of course, the phone is out and it's capturing everything because we have to show everything that we're doing in real time. So there's that shadow, but at least we're doing it. At least we're coming back together after a long period of being, split up. And I think that that's the healthy way to be. I mean, we need real music, drumming. We need to actually hug each other and grieve with each other, make music, make love, right? So I think that's a really important thing to remember, that at the very far extremes of infinite novelty is loneliness and depression. And through that door, when you have your break and you realize, fuck this, and you smash your computer or your phone or your VR headset because you just can't take it anymore, hopefully that's a bottom. And when the bottom falls out, we can actually start to rebuild and go back into connection. So,
And I'll share with the listeners something I shared with Tyson earlier, which is I think there's an opportunity to wake up to the sacredness of sexuality.
yeah.
That even porn, let alone AI, but that porn has been stealing that sacredness.
Yep.
And in that sacredness that I get to experience, I'm more full.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more fulfilled. I have more life force to go out and create and be in connection with other people and face the challenges of imperfect human relationships where all my triggers get stirred up and all the different things, how it's perfectly designed to be, that then I feel more rich and full to face those things that this, in these conversations and the information that Tyson shares and learning about all this is waking me up to how can I make this more sacred? How can
Mm-hmm.
I make this more intimate? How can I make this more human to human, beautiful messiness?
Yeah. Yeah. Couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, I the way I teach it is there is masturbation and sex to feel better, and there is masturbation and sex to better feel. And when we're talking about better feeling our emotions or the full landscape, that's where a sexual union becomes a divine, spiritual dance where we get to evolve through the sacred sexual practices, whether they're with self or with other. And it's all about our orientation. And so most men are using it to check out, whereas we can use it to check in. And when we use it to check in, sex becomes the most important portal that we can have. It becomes the holiest thing that we do. It becomes ceremony. It becomes our way to connect to God. When we get done with a mindful masturbation practice or a mindful sexual practice, we can enter these meditations where so much information, so much beauty, so much love can flow through and become creative energy. And that's ultimately where we build our lives from. So,
I love
yeah.
that. My call out to the listeners, in regards to this question, how does this help us wake up? Is to just be curious about in your own life where you utilize orgasm or arousal to help you feel better or to soothe or to regulate yourself in some way. And what, in what ways are you fueling, nurturing the sacredness, the parts that fill you up, whether it's in your relationship or in your self-pleasure practice? Ultimately, I think it's great
Mm-hmm.
for us as men to focus on our self-pleasure practice because we're not dependent upon anyone. Can you
Yeah.
bring more sacredness? Can you bring more presence? Can you get curious to switch things up that you actually leave a self-pleasure experience feeling more full, feeling more connected to life, being in a meditative present state instead of filling your brain with more information and more stimulation and overriding your nervous system in crazy ways. Look at that. Look at your relationship to sexuality alone and then bridge to someone else. And where can I switch things up to feel more fulfillment?
Yeah. Beautiful. I couldn't agree more. That's amazing, to consider that we can make that shift. And I think your point about not out, well, the way I extrapolate is not outsourcing it, right? Not outsourcing your pleasure to anyone or anything to help you soothe, to make yourself feel better. And also, if you're listening and you're like, yeah, I am using porn and masturbation or sex in order to feel better. I just want to say that's not wrong. That's not immoral. That's not bad. That's not shameful at all. And there's a different way to do it where you're going to actually feel uh, the joy of the waking up process through the sexual journey of moving into your full potential. And there's a way that I like to describe this, which is if you're super afraid in life, it has a relationship to your unexpressed orgasm. But the more you express and you become multi-orgasmic and you become loud and you own your pleasure and you're not outsourcing it, that shows up in all other areas of your life where you also have your voice and your power and your ability to focus and your ability to bring your transmission through. And so if you can be orgasmic, you will also have people listening. There's a direct correlation to that.
Mm. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Tyson. I'll put your information in the description for men to follow your work and whatever opportunities, whether it's Life Force, the group, whatever you want to share with them. I'll put that in the description as well. Thank you for
Cool.
the work that you're doing. It's changing my life, which will impact other people's lives. And I look forward to, I'm sure we'll have more of these conversations.
Yeah. Thank you, brother.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, listeners. And of course, send me any messages about other content you'd like, questions that you have, and let's be on this path together and have it strengthen us and wake us up and live in a new way.